Wesner. I ended up being a commander in the reserves. I started at the Naval Academy, graduated exactly 40 years ago today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, neat.
And went to submarine school in New London. And then after submarine school, served aboard 2 different diesel electric submarines that were relics from World War II. And I was stationed in Key West. And Key West was kind of a hot spot because of the Cuban crisis. And when I first reported for duty in January of 1963, there was barbed wire missile battalions all the way down the Keys. And they had taken over the Casa Marina, I think was the name of it, which is the largest resort hotel in Key West, and the Army used that for their barracks. And it was very tense. We had a lot of Russian presence in the Caribbean, submarines and trawlers. And part of our fun was to service another submarine, because back then you could run them out of air, and we did that a couple times in the Caribbean. So that was enjoyable.
So you did graduate from the Naval Academy?
Yes.
Okay. You went directly into service there at Key West.
Well, I went to sub school.
Okay.
It's a 6-month school.
And then you went back to Key
Then
West.
to Key West.
Okay. So on an average day, you went in then as a lieutenant? Ensign. Okay. And then on an average day, what were your duties? What did you have to do?
Well, initially, there were 10 officers, usually on a submarine. And being the most junior on board, another academy graduate and myself were in Key West at the same time. And I was the supply and commissary officer and the assistant weapons officer. And we were preparing for a trip to the Mediterranean. And they had a requisition system that you had to make out an order for all the food that you thought you would need at 3 different stops in the Mediterranean. You know, you had to put down how many beans and I don't know, how much flour and all that kind of stuff. And before we left, we loaded up. I mean, we actually walked on cases of food that we put between the engines back in the engine. And we stored 20-pound cans of coffee outboard the engines. And I mean, we had lots and lots and lots of food. And we were provisioned to go 90 days without any help.
Okay. So you had to carry all that.
Right. And then we had to replenish, which was interesting.
And how long did you serve?
5 years.
Okay. So you met your requirement that was required by the
I
Academy.
wanted to get out after 4. I did not ever intend to make the Navy a career.
Okay. And what rank were you when you exited?
I was a lieutenant then.
Okay. All right.
From active, then I went immediately into the reserves, and I
Served. How long did you serve reserves?
10 years.
10 years.
Right.
Okay. The people that became your close friends, were they basically the people that were in your immediate surroundings, or were they, since you went to the academy, were you able to keep up in your friendships from there?
Yes and no. Most of my friends from the academy went other places. A lot of them flew, and I wanted to fly, but I couldn't. My depth perception wasn't perfect, and so I wasn't able to fly because I wanted to be a jet jockey.
Yeah.
And, just couldn't do it. But at least submarines appeared to be more exciting than surface ships.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but having a submarine is sort of an elite thing?
Yes, it's an all-volunteer force,
Uh-huh.
and anytime you want it off, we had guys that would panic under some situations, and when we'd get back to port, they were off. They packed up and they were gone.
Now, how long when you went out? You said you had 90-day provisions. When you would go out in the submarine, how long were you before you got back to port?
Well, it would depend. We did a lot of daily operations out of Key West. We'd go into the Gulf, a place called the Depot, and for practice for the sub-hunter airplanes. Okay. And we'd go out there and we'd had a beacon that we showed until they found us, and then we'd submerge, and then we'd go, they tried to track us, and they drop us out of ways to listen to us and things like that. We did a lot of operations like that where we might be gone a week,
Okay.
or we've gone a day. We'd go out in the morning and back at night. The longest we were actually ever submerged was 6 weeks, and that was off the East Coast. And it was an operation where nuclear submarines would try to sneak by us, and they couldn't. I mean, even with our old stuff, we were able always to detect them.
Okay. Was that your main purpose, was to detect other subs, or of course I see that you were in the training mission so they could detect you.
Right.
But when you were out there, was it for detection of other subs, or
Well,
hodgepodge?
it was that. It was tracking Russian trawlers. We did special ops. We locked up UDT people. We had
Which stands for what?
underwater demolition team.
Okay.
SEALs now.
Okay.
Before they were called SEALs.
Okay.
And so we did some rubber raft assaults and things like that. That was a lot of fun.
Sounds like it. Now, as far as your group that you were out with, did you have a higher group battalion? I'm not sure what the Navy called it, that you were a part of, your unit was a part of.
Well, we were Subforce Atlantic, and
Okay.
that's part of the 6th Fleet, which is the Atlantic Fleet.
Okay.
And then we were in a squadron that was based out of Key West, and then it just, I don't even remember the exact organization, but our squadron commander was always a captain, which is the same thing as a colonel.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of the submarine commanding officers were commanders. Sometimes we were lieutenant commanders and then selected for commander. And of course, when I got out, I had not reached lieutenant commander yet, so I was. You rotated duties. You were an engineer for a while, and you were a weapons officer, or you were a communications officer. You had a lot of different duties because of the shortage of officers.
Now, how many people would be on the sub, approximately?
Typically 100.
100. Okay. And then, was there anything that you would, sort of a highlight of your experience while you were there, or was it more routine?
Well, there are a lot of highlights, a lot of unusual occasions. I can remember once we were in Tampa, and there had been an awful lot of groundings, and if your hull touched the bottom, that was considered a grounding. Well, we had to go out at low tide. We left when you had to leave, and it just happened to be low tide. And Tampa Bay is a very shallow bay, and we actually, I was in charge of, I was an officer of the deck, the guy that calls down the rudder commands and engine commands. And I found that we could pull away from the pier that actually the commands are all backwards because the screws were in the mud. So I actually walked the submarine out of the mud, with the propellers. But we never told anybody. But the captain got a little excited. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing what I've got to do to get us out of here."
Got it out of there.
But it's stuff like that. And we had some pretty hair-raising events. One of my friends was a conning officer. We have an officer in the conning tower and an officer in the diving control station. And he and I can drive. We had some people we were training, so we can drive the loss of power, this, that, and the other. And at the same time, we also had another problem, and we were approaching test depth and going down fast, and we finally brought it around. But that was pretty exciting. We had a couple guys get off after that excursion.
What was the maximum depth that you could go?
Our test depth was 412 feet. And of course now in the modern submarines, it's 5 times that.
But that wasn't routinely, you didn't routinely go down that deep?
No. Well, we routinely went
Tested.
to test depth, and just to make sure all the valves worked and all the stuffing tubes, everything that was supposed to hold water held. And if you had a problem at that depth, you could see what it was because of the leakage.
Were you able to repair most of those things on board, or did you have to go back to
We
board?
had to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we had a little machine shop, and we
Everything
used,
you needed.
right. Yeah, we were totally self-sufficient, and we carried 100,000 gallons of diesel.
Mm.
I mean, we in all the stores, and we could go out for 3 months.
If there was one thing that you would like to share with the citizens here in Waynesville, or the students, what would you like to share with them about your experience, positive or negative, or?
Well, the military now is not like the military was then. I mean, we had a lot more money because we were in a much different situation. But the military, I think, is still a great idea, whether you try to be an officer or enlist, just spend some time there for a couple of years. It's a great opportunity to get money for education. It's there again. It's not as good now as it used to be, but it's still, you get away from your mother's apron strings and learn to be yourself and meet people and travel.
What was the farthest? You stayed right there off the Atlantic coast. Is that the
No, we went to the Caribbean.
You did go into
right. I went to France, Spain, Italy,
all those places.
Morocco, Turkey, Greece.
And a typical time being there would be how long?
We would make what they called an Atlantic cruise, was 4 months.
Okay. Since you were in an academy, what made you choose an academy?
It was free.
Free. That's a good motivator.
I went to Kalamazoo College for 1 year before I went to the academy. I didn't know the ropes. I wrote to my senator, and I had the whole state of Michigan.
Who gave you your letter of recommendation? What political person?
It was Representative Claire Hoffman. He was, I think, in his 80s then. And it's a great place. I mean, the academies are.
Yes.
I've been to all 3 of them visiting. And the Air Force Academy is by far the most impressive, but the Naval Academy is the best.
Well, I won't argue. I have a son at West Point.
Oh, really? Poor guy.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you very much.